I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. Today we're going to be talking about a couple different topics. I think we're going to be talking about topics today. We're going to go through some topics, and we're going to have fun while we do it. So buckle up, buckaroos. I was thinking about natural state of marriage, and I was thinking about it, I think, a couple different times in session, and I've used this analogy. Maybe it's not even an analogy, but you can tell me if it's an analogy or not. Of marriage in its natural state is different than pretty much any other kind of relationship that you can have. It's not like a friendship that picks itself back up after spending, a year not talking, and then you see the other person and you just kind of get to pick up where you left off. Marriage is not the mother, brother, sister that you can kind of ignore for a month and then reach out, check in, get caught up, and move on. Marriage is not the coworker that you can ignore, or the person at church you can kind of give a head nod to. Marriage is something very different in the kind of relationship that it describes, that it is. On one level, we're talking about what marriage means and the kind of relationship that it must be in order for... No, I think that there's just a period there. It's, the kind of relationship that it must be. Marriage, in its orientation, is not two people represented by perpendicular lines that stay equal distance across time as the relationship kind of moves through time. Other relationships can sustain certain levels of distance and be fine and not grow apart. But marriage is, by its nature, oriented a bit differently. So you can't assume that the lines, that the relationship, the people within the relationship, you can't assume that they are going to stay the same amount of distance apart as you go along or as you move forward in it. And so if we're taking these lines, instead of perpendicular, kind of running equidistant across time, there's an orientation away, just a slight one. It's not huge, but it is away. And so over time, marriages naturally fade. It's not that you need to do anything intentional. In fact, if you just allow a marriage to maintain itself over time without your intervention, marriages will always fade. I was talking to a couple the other day who was coming in. They were talking through their communication issues. That's how most people present themselves, as we have communication issues. So you hear that as a counselor, and you understand that when someone presents with a case of the communication issues, I was trying to come up with an alliteration, like a clever alliteration for what they might be coming in with, but nothing came to mind. You then understand that what you're really looking for isn't necessarily their communication skills or the breakdowns therein, but you're really looking for how far apart they've grown over time. you get a serious range of individuals with a serious meaning a very wide range of distances that come in for marriage counseling. Obviously, there's some level of distance because they're there, but there's degrees of how people come in and like how they show up. So this couple that I was talking to, they were talking about communication issues, but as we kind of dug around and searched through their marriage, we found lots of really healthy foundational things, even though the beginning chapters of their relationship were rocky and filled with all sorts of, ups and downs and challenges. They had built a really firm foundation. They had a really, really strong set of shared values, which was awesome to see. They still loved each other and liked each other. And there was a high level of commitment. So those three things, I mean, that's a killer trifecta when you're talking about marriage counseling. Shared values, love each other, committed to staying together. Boom. There's all you have to do then is just be a good mirror and give them some tools, and they're gonna do well, especially over time, because once those connections are reestablished and they're feeling healthier in them, if they can kind of update that sustainable system and make their marital system more sustainable through regular touch points and stress relief and taking good care of each other, taking good care of themselves, and then they're off to the races and they're good to go. So I would say that they were experiencing distance. They were experiencing it as a severe level of distance, probably because they cared so much, and they came in wanting to do the work. They were very obviously testing me, but they came in wanting to do the work, which is all I can ask. So it was fun. It was really fun. And I hope that the work continues to go really well for them. Now, other couples, they come in a different sort of state. The distance has grown, right? As we think about these lines that are just ever so slightly aimed outward and away from one another, there are much more severe cases that come in, but they don't always present as emergencies. They don't always present as alarm bells ringing. Oftentimes, marriages that are very far apart actually present as kind of unfeeling or apathetic. I know we've talked about this before, but essentially when two people stop fighting, basically what that means in the development of the distance within a marriage is that the distance has grown beyond a certain point that you can care anymore. It's almost like there's a string between the two people, and as the relationship kind of diverges naturally, right? You don't have to do anything. It just is naturally going to do this. So as it diverges, as it goes, as it splits apart, that string, there's tension. And the female, we find most often has kind of an early warning signal for that tension. So they feel it first, and then they start to give signals that mean, hey, there's growing distance. There's a disconnect here. We need to address this. The man oftentimes isn't able to hear or respond to that call for, hey, I need you. Hey, there's this tension growing. I need some more connection. I need you to move toward me. And the man oftentimes feels like they're doing a lot or doing so much, and so they're often hearing it as like criticism, or as opposed to, and, obviously, sometimes it does come in the form of criticism, but that's kind of beside the point. The man then can either choose to respond to that signal by turning back toward her and kind of moving in, which kind of creates kind of an equal and opposite moving in. Hopefully there's kind of a mutuality in that. If they're tuned into one another, there's going to be a mutuality to turning back in and relieving that tension. But when a marriage comes in and there's kind of an apathy within this kind of model or idea, what has happened is the marriage has faded to a point. The tension grew and grew and grew as the string became intense, in tension, as that string grew in its tension over time. And then all of a sudden, that string snaps. Boom. There's like a sound effect right here. Boom. There's like a snappy one. And after it snaps, that's when there's these sensations, these feelings, a way of talking that essentially just communicates, I don't really care all that much anymore. I don't care enough to keep fighting. We've kind of, there's a mutual, like, we've asked for turning in the different ways that men and women ask for turning in over the course of a long period of time. And now I'm not really willing to ask anymore because the distance is so great and we've grown so far apart that it doesn't really make any sense to do the work to kind of repair and turn back in. Like, we're so far apart. What does it even mean for us to try and turn back toward each other and try and repair that? The likelihood of someone doing that work and having a partner that's equally mutually willing to do that work at that point in a marital deterioration, at that point in the distance, is incredibly low, almost non-existent chances to find that. And marriage counseling genuinely is hard enough. It's hard enough without. Marriage counseling is genuinely hard enough without that level of distance. No, try again. Marriage counseling is difficult enough when there is still tension in that string that kind of holds them together. But when it gets to the point where that string has broken and there's not really anything anchoring them to one another, pulling them back toward one another, or something, or maybe something super superficial is actually the thing that ties them together, such as children. Not that children are superficial, but you can't tie a marriage together with the string of a child. That's another relationship that belongs outside of the relationship. It's another relationship that doesn't exist on the same level. It is a different kind of relationship, and relying on your children to maintain your marriage, or thinking that for some reason they're better off if you can just stick it out until they graduate and then break their heart then. It just doesn't work that well. And, my wife and her siblings can attest to that. Watching a marriage break apart as an adult is a very difficult thing, and it can be a very difficult thing. And so it's not really better to just say, we'll use the string of our children to try and artificially, superficially tie ourselves back together. And with that, we will attempt to maintain this marriage while also growing further apart. And then what tends to happen is the tension, which is felt by the whole family system. The tension grows and grows. The treatment of the one another, because there's nothing really tying you together, the treatment goes out the window. And then people start justifying all sorts of funky things. This is the developmental stage of the deterioration of the distance that grows in the relationship, that goes something like, my wife is not meeting my needs, therefore I'm going to go meet my needs for myself. Or my husband isn't meeting my needs, and so I'm going to go meet them somewhere else. Now, what I'm not saying is that an affair completely destroys the system such that it can't be repaired, because there have been many affairs that have actually inspired people to do the work that needed to be done to repair the relationship that was under tension for so long. And sometimes the affair serves as a wake-up call. Now, that's not, don't go and have an affair. That's not good. That is hurtful and difficult and wrong and sucks. And yeah, anyways, it's not a fun deal. But it's not a death knell. That getting to that point, making that choice, it doesn't mean that it's not repairable. It doesn't mean that the relationship isn't worth it or isn't savable, or that the two people aren't going to be willing to turn back and redo some of the things that were adding to their distance and to their disconnect. I've seen marriages return from very dark places where people have made difficult and destructive choices for themselves and their systems. I've seen those things revive. I've seen those things come back. But we are acknowledging that a marriage gets to that point over time through the natural course of the marriage being oriented slightly away, and the growing tension of the marriage building over time. So we talked a little bit about the kind of early tensions and how we can turn toward our partners and kind of update that. And basically, the theory of a healthy marital development is essentially regular input over time, such that the account never runs dry and the tension never gets too far in the relationship. Now, the tension will always come because, again, that's the natural state of any marital relationship. The tension comes not because your marriage is broken. It comes because that's part of what marriage is. Marriage is the sequence of feeling beautifully and wonderfully and over the moon and blind and blissful and joyous, and then slowly realizing, what and who your partner is and what life is all about and how stressful and crazy it is, to trying to manage that stress and trying to manage the growing reality of what this other person is and what life brings and throws at us. And then trying to stay connected regularly by pursuing the person that you chose. And then life and stress and time taking away that connection and fading, those lines slowly, gently, growing apart naturally, the tension returning, and then you turning back toward. In a really healthy, early on in that process, I think that we allow more tension to come into that string, into that space in between us, then is healthy. And so there's kind of reactions and overreactions based on the amount of distance, or kind of trying to navigate the distance, trying to compromise, trying to work through those feelings of, I don't like how distant we are. I don't like how distant we feel. Learning to set the alarm on the distance, learning to say, hey, I really need to have a conversation, and it's going to suck, and it's going to be really hard, and I need you to be present, and I need you to not be defensive, and I need you to just hear me. Learning to say that over and over and over again as the tension returns, and as life and time threaten to take your marriage into time and space that you don't want it to go into, which is this fading, distance growing kind of dynamic. Hard conversations protect your marriage from that. Regular input, 20 minutes conversations, a date night, getting away. The whole Sustainable Systems model, episode 52, if you haven't listened to it yet, kind of talks through how we put in these fail safes that essentially create, what are those things on highways that make it so that you don't go in the ditch? Create these guardrails. Yeah. So the 20 minutes a day creates like a mini guardrail to kind of like bump, back together, fading, boom, back together, back together. So it just creates like a regular guardrail that pushes and pushes and pushes you back together. 20 minutes. And then the hour-long date night, now you're having fun. Having fun in a relationship takes the idea of an affair, kind of why do I need that? Why do I need to go outside of my relationship and nuke my family and my children's families with this curse of divorce? Why do I need to do that if I'm, really regularly connecting with my spouse and having fun with them, and, we're still making love regularly, and we are, taking a break every 6 months or so, and getting a night away, and just really, so there's like 3 levels of guardrail. And then you cover all of that with appreciation, just every day in time, just like a beautiful, colorful cloud. I don't know. It covers the relationship a long time, and everything is appreciated, which Beck and I have been working on recently, and it's been remarkable, the appreciation, and just to have Becca call out like, hey, thanks for taking out the garbage. Appreciate it. All of a sudden, when we talk about kind of emotional intimacy in the Shuka model, we talk about like being seen, being heard, being understood and known. And that depth and acknowledgement that is so vital to continuing to create a healthy culture. Now, some people it doesn't do anything for, like words are kind of empty. And so maybe your spouse needs to be appreciated in a different way. That was something that I talked to a couple about just recently, is like, maybe don't use words for appreciation. Maybe use the words, but also how do you reach your spouse? How do you reach them for appreciation? Like, do they just want you to give them a hug? Do they want a compliment? Do they want a small token or gift? Whatever it might be, expressing appreciation in a way that they want to receive that appreciation is a good way. It's like something to think about. It's not always words, but words are important too. So the Sustainable Systems model protects our relationships from the natural state of fading away, breaking apart. And that fading away and breaking apart is actually just a normal, healthy, not healthy, but it's just there. It's real. It's the reality of what marriage means and what marriage looks like. Without regular upkeep and intentionality, it will fade no matter what. And all marriages are like that. There is no exception. There's no exception to the rule of all marriages are going to fade over time if they're not adequately taken care of. And so we use the sustainable systems model to create regular, touch points and create those guardrails so that we can stay connected and that the tension of the distance that naturally comes over the course of time does not break us. But in fact, it is a regular reminder that we need to be turning in toward our partners, staying connected, staying friends, staying partners, having the hard conversations that are required in order to continue to develop intimacy, seeing and hearing and understanding and knowing our partner. And and that's the whole shebang. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We're going to wrap it up. If you have an opportunity, would you mind jumping on Spotify and throwing a 5-star dealie on the Spotify? You can also go on Apple. Actually, most people listen on Apple right now. There's one review on there. That's been great. Thank you so much for the review. I don't even think that person really listened to it because it was like super early on in this process. Maybe they did. Maybe I'm being cynical about it because of the lack of other reviews on there. But if you wouldn't mind, I'm begging you. At this point, I'm just begging you. Let's get 2 reviews by next Monday. That would be great. Or Sunday, maybe. Maybe if you're like a friend or family member, you could just do a pity review, just like hit a 5 stars and then type something, anything, just type like cat. I don't care, whatever it has to look like. But anyways, we appreciate you. We thank you for listening. And this is the end.